Hunter. I'm the Director of Development Services for the City of Bonita Springs. We're very happy you're here tonight to participate in our program. I did want to give you a little bit of background. The city last year did a request for proposals for design teams to prepare a vision for Bonita Beach Road. Tool Design Group is that firm that was selected by the City Council. They were here the last week in January and held several public workshops and prepared some pin-up starter ideas at that time. They then continued to collect public comments, continued to research the road, provide more information. On Tuesday evening, they held open office hours for the public to come and get more information. And tonight concludes their public process with us with the conclusion of this workshop, which will be showing the beginning of their ideas for Bonita Beach Road. They then will go back and prepare a report, and we'll be coming back to City Council to present that report. So at this time, the ideas and images you're going to see on the screen, they have not yet been presented to City Council to vote on or to approve, and nor is there current funding in the city's current budget to make any of those improvements. Those would all be much later processes as we move through. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. We do have one of our council members here, and I would like to recognize him. If you could just wave. Mike Gibson. Hey, thank you. Our city manager is to the rear of the room, Carl Schwing. Hi, everybody. I know I had a couple quick questions, so if you need the ladies' room or gentlemen's room, if you step right out the door, the ladies' room is to the left. The gentlemen's room, you do need to go right around the corner. We do have a sign-in sheet, so please take an opportunity to sign the sign-in sheet as well with an agenda. I did want to reiterate that the city is continuing to take public comment throughout this entire process. So anything you see here today, if you've got questions, concerns, comments you want to provide, you can continue to email those to me at the city's website as well as our city clerk. Also feel free to contact your mayor and council members and provide your comments to them as well. We're here to gather your concerns, your questions, and continue to keep you a part of the public information process. So at this time, I'm going to turn we are going to have a question and answer period at the end. We would like to form a line this way, and we would ask if everyone could, when we get to the question and answers, I will help, I'll facilitate, we'll come here, you'll be able to be handed the microphone. We would ask that you try to reserve your comments to 2 to 3 minutes so that we get a chance to hear from everybody this evening. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ian Lockwood with Tool Design Group to introduce his team and to continue the process. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Hello. Thanks for coming. I'm Ian Lockwood with Tool Design Group. I'm a transportation engineer, and I'll introduce the team in a moment. I just want to start off, who came last month to either the 2 public meetings or the 2 open houses? Did anybody come? Okay, about a third of everybody. Did anybody come at the open house this week? Okay. I just want to start by thanking you for coming to those meetings because your input had. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah. Right close. Oh, that's even better. Okay. The input had a lot of effect on our choices and our designs, particularly with regard to the number of lanes. And there was a lot of emails going around and a lot of energy in the room on Tuesday. And so we heard you loud and clear. So let's start off that we're not proposing to reduce the number of lanes on Bonita Beach Road. So just to clear the elephant out of the room. But the other ideas that we have, I think you'll find very exciting, and I think you'll like them a lot. There are 2 optional, one optional area down by Hickory, around that the highway curve at the end of Bonita Beach Road, which we have an idea, and it's not hugely important for the concept for the whole road, but it's hugely important for the safety and the quality of life and the address down there by the beach. So it's something to think about, and it's completely optional. And then there's a part near Old 41 which gives the appearance of a a reduction from 6 to 4 lanes for a portion of the road. We're actually adding lanes, and you'll see that when we get to that portion through network. So, so let's see. So anyway, I wanted to get that out, and I really wanted to. I know it was a little anxious at times at the meetings, but I think we got to a good place. And I think part of the cool thing about this process of doing it in the public eye, in the sunshine, not in a smoky back room, is that people had the opportunity to come in and tell us what they thought. It's your community, and we were here to listen and then translate what we heard into the concepts. And I think we got there. At least we hope we did. And if we didn't, let us know tonight, and we'll absorb all that, all those ideas as well. So from Tool Design Group, there was myself, Cindy, and Ken. And then Greg, at Landscape Architect, very helpful for the, you're going to see a really cool palette of tree planting. We heard a lot about wanting to beautify the corridor. And then Tara is helping with making this feasible through the planning regulations and that kind of thing. So it's not something that just might sit on a shelf. Let's see. Any other preliminaries I'm forgetting? Oh, by the way, as you came in, you saw us putting this together. So I'm not exactly sure what slide will come up because we literally just finished the designs today and hammered them into the PowerPoint to share them with you as you were walking in the room. So a lot of this is kind of fresh for us too. So we're planners and engineers, landscape architects. So Cindy and Tara are planners. I'm an engineer. We have 3 landscape architects here. And we also write books. So we're writing design guidelines for the country, actually, on state-of-the-art bicycle facilities and that kind of thing. So here's our study area. So Bonita Beach Road actually becomes a private road at a certain point. So our study area is the public part all the way to Hickory. So our biggest job that we were hired to do was to come up with some kind of vision for the road. Our challenge was focusing on some of the more difficult intersections, particularly for people on foot. Has anybody tried to walk across 41? It's a challenge. Or a bicycle. So we're trying to make the area easier for everybody, and then to advance the planning so that the corridor can develop more in keeping with the community's vision as opposed to anybody else's individual visions. But it's all about advancing a bunch of values that we're going to go over that we heard loud and clear from the community. So these are in yellow are the public meetings. We're at the last one for our process right now, but the city will continue the process. And these are the open houses. So this is kind of the end of the visioning part and the beginning of subsequent processes. So what we saw, we're all familiar with the road. It's a very fast, large-scale road in places. We heard stories about what it used to be like. And I think those are the sorts of values that people would like to see brought back into the design. There are folks cycling and walking. It's not the most comfortable road to do either on, and so we'd like to try and enhance that somewhat. And then we had a great deal of participation in January. So I know there's lots of things to do for people here, and so we really appreciate people coming out and sharing their ideas with us. So we talked about values in January, what you liked about the street and want to preserve, what you don't like, and you want to change, and things that were here that you would like to see created. And these are some of the things about the values. People really value beauty and aesthetics, to be comfortable, regardless of how you're using the street, increased safety. These are things that people hold dear. These are things that people want to preserve. There's access to the beach was a big idea. Access to the restaurants and businesses. A lot of your tax base is located along the street in terms of your business community and your entrepreneurs, and the idea was that we didn't want to block them off with a highway to allow people just to drive through. We wanted to be able to access the businesses and you're their customer, so you can get to the businesses and they can actually make a living along the street. This is what people didn't like, kind of the lack of identity and landscape. It's not bicycle friendly. There's very little parallel network, and so this is a particular problem coming off the beach. You only have one choice kind of thing, and so you're kind of stuck. And there's a lot of issues with that in lesser degrees elsewhere, but that's a really big issue in the area. And these are things that people would like to create. I want to just point out the slow speeds idea. This is more about not speeding. There's a lot of kind of reckless driving because you've got lanes that are the same width as those on the interstate, and so people drive really quite quickly. And the idea was more slower and steadier, so you can get through in a reasonable time, but not jeopardize the safety of people along the way. And then, of course, the aesthetics, the destinations, this whole idea of beach town and aesthetics. And this is going to come through with what we call character areas and the type of landscape and so forth that we're going to be proposing based on what we heard. So this is last Tuesday, and here we're working on the end of Bonita Beach down by Hickory. And I think we got some pretty cool ideas, and we'll be sharing them with you at the end of the presentation. This was kind of the big theme. We want to be a place and not just where people drive through quickly. And I think we heard that loud and clear on several occasions. And then we talked about safety a lot. There's statistical safety, which is reducing the number of crashes and injuries. But then there's the feeling of safety. Can you actually go for a walk or cross the street comfortably? And then there's this idea of liability. Can we as your engineers and planners and designers who help build and maintain the streets, can we do this legally? And I think this situation is getting better, so we can actually implement more creative designs now than we could before. Before it was much more highway oriented, now it's a little more community oriented. So these are some of the strategies to increase the safety. This more slow, steady thing, instead of hurrying up and stopping at the signal, and hurrying up and stopping at the signal. The whole idea with enclosure of trees, getting the lane widths to be safer. These 12-foot lanes add, people are much more reckless when they have that kind of space. Narrower lane widths will actually increase the safety. The roundabouts, you're actually building 3 in your downtown now, and you're going to find that it'll be a whole lot easier to get around and across those, particularly on foot. And then some connected street networks so that you don't have to use the big roads and take what we call circuitous routes to get home. You can actually get directly where you want to go. And then what we call complete streets. And those are streets where you can walk, bike, or drive comfortably. So complete streets, we're pretty good as engineers accommodating the trucks and the cars. The difficulty for a lot of engineers is to design streets that are comfortable for the bikes and the pedestrians, particularly busy streets. So we think we have some ideas that really help that. And along the way, we want to make sure that the institutions, the businesses, the hotels, all the things that you'll find up and down the street, the recreational areas, that the street also helps them succeed as well. So I just want to talk a little bit about roundabouts, because there's a lot of misconceptions about them in cities all over the country. And first of all, they can be quite beautiful. Often they're used as a different type of intersection control compared to traffic signals. But unlike traffic signals, which have all that clutter in the sky and the control box, they can be actually quite attractive. These are traffic circles. You'll see these in Boston and up in New Jersey. They're terrible, actually. They're very dangerous. We're working in New Jersey, in the Flemington area, where we're taking these out and putting in actually roundabouts, which look like this, substitute for a signal. And then you see those mini circles as well, and that's like a traffic calming measure that you might find in a neighborhood. So that's kind of the scale we're talking about. And that's what a traffic circle looks like. And that's what a roundabout looks like. So completely different scale. There's not much on these streets. No. So this is a signalized intersection. And all these green dots represent ways cars can crash with each other, and all these squares represent how cars can crash into pedestrians. So there's lots of conflicts, they call those. And this is what a roundabout looks like. So there's far fewer conflict points. And the other thing about a roundabout is, compared to a signal, is the speeds people use to go through them. And I don't know about you, but has anybody seen a green light and you never saw it change green, so it's called a stale green light? Have you ever sped up so you don't get caught by the red light? Everybody does it. Come on. So we all do it, but nobody speeds up for a roundabout. And it's when people speed up for signals that's when people get hurt. You know, if someone makes mistakes and comes out to turn right on red or something, you crash into them, that's where people get injured and killed. So consequently, there's about half as many crashes at roundabouts than traffic signals. And there's about 80 to 90% fewer deaths and injuries. So they're far, far safer. We're starting to use these at schools and universities to help the students cross the street as well. So actually quite easy to cross the street. You can ride your bike through them. And they're also friendly for deliveries and fire trucks and school buses and all the sorts of vehicles that have to get around. This is in Bradenton on the waterfront. And it was difficult to cross the street because the speeds on the street were pretty high. And then once the roundabout went in, it actually made the area beautiful and accessible again, so people could actually walk to the beach and go to the restaurant and that kind of thing. This is down in Miami area. So the building that we're in, they wanted to redevelop this site, and the signals weren't working, but the roundabout cleaned that up and created actually quite a beautiful environment where there used to be a lot of turn lanes and mast arms and control boxes. This is a 5-lane arterial in San Diego, and it was replaced with a 2-lane street with roundabouts. And the roundabouts actually process the traffic a whole lot more efficiently than traffic signals, and so they could recycle 3 of the lanes into parking, landscape, wider sidewalks, and so the area used to be kind of disadvantaged from an economy perspective. And parents wouldn't let their kids walk there because it was dangerous. But now it's a very vibrant place, and the roundabouts handle the traffic pretty successfully. So it kind of speaks to the lesson that usually it's not the lanes that fail in these sorts of environments, it's the intersections. And I think we heard from just about every second person that the intersection at 41 and Bonita Beach Road is clogging everything up. So it's the intersection. The lanes can deliver all the traffic, but they just can't get through the intersection. And some people are saying they're staying for multiple cycle lengths. This is in Vail, Colorado. And you can see that you can use them in succession. This is a large arterial road, and you can see there's several of them. They even use them at the interchange now. You know, like up at 75, it's called a diamond interchange. You come off the highway, and you have those signals. So in Vail, they actually have roundabouts there, and so it processes the traffic quite well. The disadvantages of roundabouts, sometimes the volumes are too high, and sometimes they don't fit. So for example, at Imperial, the volumes are too high right now, so the roundabout wasn't feasible. But elsewhere, the volumes are in that sort of range where it handles the traffic really nicely and keeps things moving so you're not stuck at a red light. So it has all kinds of advantages about reducing speeding and emissions, helps the pedestrians, they look good. In total, they actually reduce the impervious surface, so you get to less storm and runoff and less pollution. And it actually frees up space on the sides for things like sidewalks. And this is what we heard a lot. Change the entrance fee. Like, people come off the interstate and we want to make a statement. This is our city, we're proud of it. And it helps create identity. And I think we heard that a lot, that we wanted to be more proud of our community. So let's talk about the big intersection. So this is Bonita Beach Road, and that's 41. So the beach is down here, the interstate's over there, Fort Myers is that way. Is everyone oriented?
Yeah.
And probably the biggest complaint is the left turns. Leaving the beach during the afternoon peak hour during season. And we went out and we watched it like we were asked to. And so the left turn lanes fill up, and then the left turners get into the through lane, block that, and that backs up through several intersections. And consequently, the through lane isn't functioning anymore. So now you're down to one through lane. So I think everyone's probably experienced that. At least everyone told us about it, so we're guessing you have experienced it. So that's the tough part. So we time the signals, and so when you get a green light at the left turn, by the time you get another green light, when everyone else has taken their turn, by the time it comes around again, you get another green light, it's 180 seconds. So that's called the cycle length. So you have a 3-minute cycle length. So the green time for you when you're turning left is 34 seconds. And so for the remaining, what's the math, 146 seconds, you're stopped. So nothing's moving for 146 seconds. You got 34 seconds to make your turn. So if you add up the two lanes, 34 plus 34 is you got 68 seconds for people to turn left. So if a car takes a second and a half or so to turn, that means you get what, 20? What's this divided by 1.5? 20 cars, 23 cars, something like that. So every 3 minutes, you can get 23 cars through. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that not a lot of cars are getting through, right? And if someone's texting or daydreaming, yeah, so this is a kind of a perfect world. So the what they call the capacity of these left turn lanes is approaching the maximum. I think we can all agree on that. And this is a diagram of a queuing analysis. So I remember in your engineering school you studied queuing analysis. I'll give you the quick lesson. This is the length of the queue. It gets from 0 higher and how long you have to wait. And here is how much of the left turn capacity is getting used. So you're operating way up here towards the full end. So when you plot it out, when you're operating up here, that means you have a really long queue. Now you don't need science to tell you that. You can actually go out and look at it. So I'll be coming back to that graph in a second. So what we think we ought to do is try and get some of these people turning left to turn left somewhere else. So our idea was to build a street around here to the other traffic signal that's right there on the other side of the Publix and have a left turn lane for you to turn left there. And that intersection has, or will have, well, they all have, all your intersections here operate with a 180-second cycle, so because they're all synchronized. So that will be 180 seconds. And just assume that we get the same amount of green time for the left turn. So now we have 102 seconds worth of green time, which is a 50% increase. Now that is huge. So we go back to our graph. If a third of the traffic goes to that third left turn opportunity, then you're working at a lower capacity and the queues drop dramatically. Now we all know that this is a theory. In real life, this doesn't happen. There's a number of people who said, I don't even go during the peak hour because it's just too crazy and too busy. I'll spend too much time there. So once that third left turn lane is put in, some people will come and return to the peak hour, increasing the traffic levels, right? That's just human nature. So what will probably happen is we won't get there'll be more traffic in total coming. But the idea is that if we can get a good portion of it to use that third turn lane, then the queues can drop and we can get kind of a more normal operation going on. So that's the benefit of that piece of network and that left turn. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
When they come back in winter.
So it doesn't take a big change. You can see how this goes up high. It actually goes to infinity in theory. So a little small movement here makes a big movement there. Now, there's actually more opportunity here than that I let on. So when you're sitting at this signal, for 24 seconds, you've got the ability to turn left. 24 seconds into the cycle, it becomes, you can turn left and go through. You remember both movements happen? And that through movement goes all the way to the 84th second of the cycle. So the through movement has 60 seconds of ability to go through. So the traffic on Tamiami, the traffic on 41, is stopped for 84 seconds to allow this to happen. So if we want, we can increase this left turn movement higher, up to 84 seconds in theory. So we can actually get more seconds of left turns to clear that queue out. So everyone get that?
Yes.
We can share that gap a little bit more?
You're going to have a clog up on 41 because the traffic is coming from Fort Myers during rush hour.
So for those of you who couldn't hear her, she said, you're going to get a clog up on 41 if we do this, but actually we're not changing the timing on 41 at all. All we're doing is using the same gap you have here, we're using that same gap there. So there's no downside for 41. I'm going to hold off on the questions till the end though, because we're going to run out of time. I know you got a burning question, but just write it down, okay? So this is what the network looks like today. And I think half the people in the room told us that there's no parallel, or very few parallel routes. There's the Vanderbilt down here. Everyone knows that loop, and there's a couple. But basically, there's not a very, very good connected network of streets. So this is the one we just talked about here, something like that. But there's other opportunities to do more network. And every one of them shares that same characteristic of using green time at other intersections. So those other intersections can help share the load and free this up for people who actually have to go through. So a lot of good things can happen with network. Some of them require, like the dotted ones, like if this strip mall were ever to redevelop, you could go through there. Some of the streets exist, and one of the key things when you're ever proposing new network is never ever propose one new connection, because the people affected feel like you're picking on them. This is a community thing that we're talking about. So what you ought to do is propose many, many of them, because then it helps the whole community. So this goes back a little bit more regionally, so we're a little higher up from the earth. This is the main framework streets of the community. And here are some opportunities. Veterans Memorial, there's a right-of-way all the way through here from Vanderbilt all the way up past 75. And if it were connected, then the people who live in here don't even have to participate in Bonita Beach Road. If you wanted to get out to here, you don't even have to go through this intersection. You go up Vanderbilt and up here. So it creates direct routing where you can avoid problems and find different ways to move around. And it only has to be a 2-lane road. It doesn't have to be a 4-lane road or anything like that, and you could get where you wanted to go directly. And if there's a crash, you got some redundancy. Now there's a railway line right in here, and if old 41 were to, instead of just attached to new 41, if we were to continue, there's a cul-de-sac, or a turnabout, I should say, right here, and that's set up to connect. You could go right up to Corkscrew Road without ever having to get on new 41. So the local community can get around without having to participate in all of that, all those big intersections. On Strike Lane, there's a little piece missing right there, which would help that neighborhood find ways back and forth without having to go all the way around. So those are some of the big network opportunities that would all help the sparse network that you have today. So this is the laneage right now on Bonita Beach Road, and so that's what's there now, and this is what's sorry, I didn't know that was going to happen. So that's the number of lanes now. This shows these what we're calling nodes. There's a kind of an existing commercial node around 41, and there's an opportunity for a kind of a cool node here at Old 41. You're investing a lot of money right now and effort into your downtown, and this allows that kind of downtown idea to have an address on Bonita Beach Road and to let people know there's something cool down here and maybe do something cool here as well. But I'm going to get into a little more detail about that in a minute. So there's the lanes, and this is what we're proposing. So notice there's the only part that really changes is right here, and I'm going to show you a whole network of streets we're going to go in there that actually make up for what we're showing here. So there's no lane reductions, which I think when we came here, we were new, but we learned not to do that. So we are learning organisms. So all the lanes stay. Now you'll notice there's a little change at the end too, in the curve, and that's that optional idea I talked about. But we'll look at that at the end, and again, it's something you can look at or not. It's up to you. But we think there's a lot of problems down here, and we think that there's a solution. But you'll find out the downside is that it'll take a lot of cooperation to do it. So that's we'll see how that goes. So let's zoom into the node around Old 41. This is the racetrack, the dog track. There's an old industrial area through here, and there's a beautiful creek running through here. There's another creek system. There's the railway line that doesn't have rail traffic on it. It's owned by a real estate company who rents crossing opportunities. So if the city wants to cross it, they have to pay these folks an annual fee. That's the business model for that rail line. So that's our idea. So it's going to redevelop. Those folks have property rights. They can develop. How it develops, we can help shape that so it doesn't create the sorts of problems that you want to avoid. The industrial area will probably redevelop too, so we should sort of get ahead of it and plan things so that it can redevelop in a nice way according to your vision. So the big idea here is not to overburden the intersection at Old 41 like happened at New 41. And so notice that it doesn't matter what direction you approach this intersection from, if you want to turn, you can find other ways to go, whether you're going left or right. And this is really important because let's say you want to turn, you're coming up here and you want to go downtown. If this was only one intersection, you'd be sitting at a left turn lane forever at a red light. Now, you can either go through and in off-peak hours go through easily like this, or if it's busy, you could turn in here and get downtown. So you have some choices. So at New 41, you have no choices. Here you have some choices. The other thing that kind of jumps off the page is the connected open space system. Right now, in a lot of places, you have sort of a disaggregated open space system. You can see the beautiful creek. There's actually a creek that runs through the parking lot. We can connect these together and have a trail and walking system, bike system, so you can, if you live out here, or if you live in the new area, you can actually walk and bike and get to all these places. These folks are considering, they're trying to get some license changes or something so they can get like a hotel, casino, probably some kind of mixed-use development. But there's probably all kinds of things in here that you might want to visit, and you don't have to necessarily drive. You can actually get around on foot. So there's and in a moment you're going to see a really cool bicycle facility that we're thinking about on Bonita Beach Road, and that can connect through too. So you can get everywhere comfortably on your bicycle as well. Then the block structure creates a development pattern which is sort of in kin with your scale of your downtown. And then notice the dark lines. These are what we're calling A streets, and these are very walkable streets where the buildings kind of front the street, and all the servicing and stuff is provided off the B streets. So you have this nice framework of highly walkable, engaging streets. And we heard a lot of appetite for placemaking on Bonita Beach Road, and this would create a place that would nicely anchor this end of your downtown. If you leave it kind of random and up to the existing rules, you'll get more of the same of what you're getting, and folks don't necessarily like those outcomes. And then, so this is kind of a blow up of the intersections. And so as you're coming from the interstate, one of the 6 lanes drops into the network and into the downtown. And then when you're coming back, the 6 lanes created here. Now the roundabouts, these are all 2-lane roundabouts, and they will process the traffic so that you can get through here in less travel time, but slow and steady, and you can walk across the street safely and easily. So we think that would be actually quite beautiful, and it creates a zone, an identifiable zone for that address of your downtown on Bonita Beach Road. Here's the bicycle facility on the south side. This is a bicycle facility we're suggesting on Old 41. With this roundabout here and the network, you won't have to widen Old 41. You can keep it the scale. Everyone talked about that community scale that we all love, and you can do that with the network. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Ken. He's a landscape architect, and he's going to talk about character zones. The whole street's not the same. It has different character zones, and he's going to go through that.
All right, thanks, Ian. Yeah, this kind of goes back to the beginning where we were going through some of the things we heard from you the last time in January about identity, creating some of these, some character, and providing ways so that people, when they're going along Bonita Beach Road, they feel a sense of place. And so we've identified some of these, and the terminology could change. This was kind of our thinking. But there was definitely kind of what we considered a beach zone when you got from, this is West Ave, from there over where you're going across the bridges. And then you have kind of what we call a commercial zone with a lot of the strip development and the Publix. There's kind of a historic zone, kind of that node that Ian just described there at Old 41. Then there's kind of another commercial zone. And then you have the whole interstate area there where the interstate is, that kind of has a different feel, but it has the potential to be a nice gateway. And we'll show you some concepts of that here in a second. And then once you get over to the east, that's where a lot of the residential areas, and it kind of has more of a community feel, has more of a wider edge, especially on the south side. And so in looking at those, we tried to see how can we identify those easily. And so using streetscape, using plant material, using kind of just a different vocabulary, and then we'll go into the actual trail and some of the street design in itself here in a second. So when looking at these plant palettes for these different zones, all of them are going to have some of the same plants, especially looking at more of a native plant palette, but then having some of the larger accent trees really be the thing that identifies the corridor in these different zones. So in the community area, so in the far east, using some larger shade trees, really to help frame the street, have shade along the sidewalks, but then of course still having some of the smaller natives, the sable palms, live oaks, some of the cypress and slash pine in those wet, dry retention areas on the south side. Then as you get in the interstate, and again, we've got a concept that Greg drew up of that intersection there where the interstate comes in. We're trying to, again, find some areas where we have the native plants, but then have some bigger accent plants, some big palms, some things that really create this kind of gateway feel whenever you're coming off the interstate and entering in, essentially coming off and then entering in that area by Old 41 that Ian just showed. When you get in kind of the commercial areas, that's where more of your ornamentals tend to be. So things like crepe myrtles can be used, some olives, maybe some pitch apple. And then having some of the palms get a little bit more variety, not just sable palms, but maybe get some royals, some Alexandra palms, some things that have some character. Can even be on the edges, but also in the medians, where they're planted. And then as you get into the old 41 zone that Ian was just showing, we had a lot of large trees that we were trying to have in that median where we have a little bit more space. So you get some gumbo limbos using the buttonwood, having the edge kind of still be with that native landscape palette. And then once you get to that zone that's kind of more by the bridges, where you're going across the water and getting down to the beach, that's where you get more of the salt-tolerant plants, some more tropicals. Again, you get some exotics, but you can get some figs and have the sea grape. Just get that context-sensitive planting there on the beach itself. We feel like that kind of just using the landscape and get some vertical elements that provide that kind of character-defining elements will help define the road more than just the asphalt and what's happening on the ground. Then we've got the idea, I think some of you, especially the ones that have been in and saw the presentation before, one of the big ideas is to get a safe, comfortable walking and biking facility along Bonita Beach Road. Like we saw every time we've been here, there's been people out riding. I've been riding along the road, and every day I've been sitting there and people are either going the wrong way on the sidewalk or they're dodging across, they run lights. I don't know what the statistical safety is there, but it seems pretty hostile riding along there. And so one of the things that we're doing all across the country, and we're seeing a whole lot more of, and states and the whole country is getting behind, is stuff that we learned from Europe, and that's using separated bicycle lanes. And so, the definition, here's kind of a written one that we had that we're using. But essentially, we're trying to get them separated from traffic, because that's where the conflicts are. And so whether it's paint and parked cars providing separation, if it's curbs, or if it's just completely off and going through a park. It's separated from cars as well as pedestrians. The pedestrians here are a little bit, they've got a little curb. Here they're on the sidewalk separate. And so we've got some cool concepts that we'll go through here in a second. But again, this is all coming from stuff that we should have learned probably 20, 30 years ago when the Europeans were already doing this. So back in the 70s, the Netherlands were actually at the same place we are now and were then, where they're having a big problem with vehicular crashes and fatalities. So here you can see in yellow are children road fatalities, and then the blue are road fatalities with adults. And so in the 70s, the Netherlands made the decision that we're going to design for bikes and pedestrians and not so much for the car. I mean, if you go over there today, you can still get around by car, but you see a ton of people getting around by bikes and on foot. And so here's how they still have some, but it's reduced dramatically, and they really hardly ever have any that result in death. But especially whenever you compare them to the United States, the statistical safety are just dramatically different. And what's really interesting, and I think anybody just common sense can tell, this is in D.C., where I'm from, and riding there, you're very nervous. It's pretty tough. Notice, you're decked out in full yellow. You've got the helmet on. You're almost like you're going into battle. The Netherlands, most people don't even wear helmets. Kids are riding, parents are riding with their kids. It's very comfortable, and so it's one of those things where the statistical safety, like Ian was talking about before, is there to back it up. But then there's just this comfort level where you just feel more comfortable and feel safer. And in the United States, it shows with the number of people that are actually riding bikes. So there's this 1% that are the experienced, confident, the people in spandex or the bright yellow, that they will ride on anything. So I'm probably one of those people. I was out riding on Bonita Beach every day, and knock on wood, I haven't gotten hit. So it's one of those things that, I'm confident. There are some places I wouldn't ride, but that road's actually not too bad. There are a whole lot of people, though, that are somewhat confident, and they're out there right now too. Where they're kind of there, but they're just taking the sidewalk. They have to use a bike to get around, and so that's up to 10% of the population that really want to be riding a bike, but aren't able to because of the condition of the road. there's actually, and this is statistical data that we've done surveys on, there's 60% of people that would love to ride a bike, but there's no way they're going to get out there with the way the roads are, and there's no facility for them. Now, mind you, there's still 30% of the people that just aren't going to ride a bike at all. They're going to drive everywhere, and that's fine. But there's still a ton of people that we can get off the cars and kind of help those margins, like Ian was talking about, where if we can just get a small percentage of the people not using Bonita Beach Road, it kind of helps everything work a little bit better, especially those intersections. So using something like these separated bike facilities really attract more people to biking. It helps get more of that 60% of the people that are interested, families, younger people, women, elderly folks, just people that, again, they've got the bike sitting in the garage, but they're just not going to get out there unless it's a path. And people we talk to, you're already doing that. Going up Hickory, you've got the wide path going on the kind of the east side. People told me, they're like, yeah, that's how we get up to Lover's Key and up to Fort Myers Beach. But then they either bail out and just go home, or they ride on the sidewalk, along Bonita Beach and are hugging the curb and the guardrail. And if they meet a pedestrian, there's a guy said he actually got off the road. If you're coming and you meet a bike, you kind of have to bail and go into traffic. So this kind of thing is trying to get it where it's separated, and it actually helps the motorists as well, because the bikes and the peds are out of the way, and they can focus on the cars around them. So again, we're using it for safety. It minimizes conflicts. It helps delineate the space. It's for comfort, because we're separating the modes, and it kind of balances the delay and accommodates cyclists that are coming toward you. And then connectivity. If we were in a place that was a gridded network, cities and stuff, we do these, and Cindy's working on one in St. Paul that's a loop that goes around the city. The ones we have in DC that we work on are going to some of the major destinations. Here you've got a key destination going right to the beach, east-west. And in the bike map for Lee County, you can see there's a big gap along Bonita Beach Road where there's just nothing there. So this will help fill that gap and create that east-west connection with your bike network, and provide a sidewalk for pedestrians as well. So when we're looking at these and looking at real photos here in the United States, Indianapolis, like I said, they're in DC, they're in Colorado, and so they're catching on. And so I think if we can do a high quality facility here down in Florida and Bonita Beach, I think it could be a real national example of how to do good bike and pedestrian facilities. Some of the key things everybody points at, of course, it's easy when you're just going along the roadway, but then what do you do when you get to driveways or side streets? And what we're thinking along the side streets where you have come up to signals or stop signs is actually to keep the path, whether you're on the sidewalk. So here's kind of the idea. You got your road, having a tree lawn, so you actually have some space between the cars and the bikes, having a wide two-way bike facility, so that's about 10 feet wide, having a little buffer between the bikes and the pedestrians, and then whenever it comes up to an intersection, that buffer area can actually tighten up, curve the bikes over, give you room so then you can have kind of a ramped apron. So that's not a speed hump or anything, but it's more of a gradual, 10-foot wide ramp. So it's not like a speed hump, but it's just something that the cars are aware that, hey, I'm entering a different area. The bikes and pedestrians don't have to worry about ADA ramps or getting pointed in the wrong direction. They just ride straight across, and then the cars just go over and go back down. And these can be signalized. They can work with the same signals that are there. There's lots of guidance on that already, and we're working on new guidance for some of the new AASHTO guides and things for the national standards. Same thing for driveway crossings. Whenever you come across, most of your driveways, some of them already have that kind of flare apron. So this is just integrating the same thing, and they're keeping the bikes and peds at the same plane. Some of the areas, if anything redevelops and the buildings get brought up more toward the front, and you're not dealing with some of the greenfield areas that you have now, this can incorporate the same spatial zones can happen with, instead of doing the tree lawn, you can have kind of a hard area where if you park your car there, you can get out, tree grades, 10 feet, 4-foot zone can then have benches, you can have trash. I've heard from a lot of folks that, if they put in this trail, we need a place to sit down and rest every now and then. It's, several miles to get from here to the beach. And so providing seating, providing places to stop. And then when the buildings come up, then you can incorporate things like outdoor dining. The businesses can react to that extra hardscape area along there. So then once we start getting into the actual designs of how do we fit this in on the roadway and the area we have. So we're going to start from the very far east and move toward the beach. So this area, again, this is kind of that community zone where you've got a little bit more room. This is kind of your gateway. So this is where we're really working in with the interstate area there. Know what you mean about the slides?
I know, it's a surprise
Oh,
every
yeah.
time.
This one. So the interstate area where the interchange is, FDOT, they've got a new initiative. It's bold something. It's about bold landscapes. And so they're really trying to emphasize using bigger plant material. It's not just the little small trees that come and the wishful thinking that, oh, one day they'll be big. Don't worry about it. They're coming in with some impactful stuff. And so trying to reimagine that and getting some water, getting some trees, getting some things that really give it some identity. And Greg's group, you've already started looking at some of these, and these are happening already in the state. So this is a prime candidate, I think, to really introduce to FDOT that, hey, this might be one to look at next to really get that gateway feeling coming off the interstate and into the community. And now looking at going out from 75 out, where you've got this wide, it's a 200-foot right-of-way. You've got this large area on the south side where, again, you've got dry retention. We can come in with that same trail idea where it's the 10-foot bikeway, have like a 7-foot sidewalk, and really work with the existing swale and detention area there. Come in with some retaining walls that have seating integrated in them. Give plenty of room, get some new landscaping along there. Some folks said it kind of looks ratty. It's not very kept real nice, and they need some new trees and some different things that could be environmentally pleasing. So you could get some bald cypress and some other native plantings along there. But really, this really starts to set up going from the community area into downtown. Actually, I think I handed that to you. I'm guessing. Because I think now we're going to go from 75 back through that racetrack area that Ian showed before and through some of the key intersections.
Thank you. So this is what the cross-section is now from the interstate up to racetrack, which is just near Old 41. And you can see it's a lot of asphalt. And what you're expected to do now is ride your bike here. And of course, none of us want to do that because it's really, as Ken said, pretty hostile. So what we're suggesting is, instead of those interstate width lanes, put safer 10-foot lanes in, and use the space we generate to create the space for a really nice bike facility and sidewalk. So we're not removing any lanes at all. We're just making them a smaller, safer width, and we're removing the 4-foot wide bike lanes and putting them into a comfortable place with trees and shade and seating and that kind of thing. So now you can imagine actually riding through here because you'd be comfortable, you can sit down and rest, there'd be trash receptacles, that kind of thing, as opposed to that. And so how it might look, so this is Imperial, and this is Bonita Beach. I think it's, 10 lanes wide here? 10 lanes. And we're not removing any of them. Just emphasizing that, just in case anyone didn't hear it. But we are making them a safer width. And so there's the bike facility, and there's those crossings, so you can cross the street. This is where the roundabout didn't work, by the way, because there's just too much traffic there. So we would have loved to have done it, but it was too much. And then we get to Tamiami. So we talked about the left turns and so on, and creating extra left turns. But this is what it would look like with the separated bike facilities. Again, no reduction in the number of lanes. However, now you've got a nice bike facility and walking facility. The other cool thing about this is that every lane coming in gets to go someplace, just like it does today. But because we've narrowed them to a more safe dimension, the amount of time it takes a pedestrian to cross the street is actually shorter. The crossing time is shorter. Your exposure to traffic is shorter when you're walking. And it frees up green time for the motorists. So it's easier for the pedestrians, and you get more green time for the cars. So it's kind of a win-win for both the motorists and the pedestrians. There's a couple of right turn lanes. This right turn lane goes into the hotel. This one goes into the drugstore. And it starts at the pedestrian crossing, and we'd suggest that the right turn lane start a little further away so that we again shorten the crossing distance. We're not narrowing the lanes on Tamiami 41. We're just going to start the right turn lane a little further along so that the pedestrian has a shorter crossing. So by doing that, it's actually shorter to cross the street in any direction, and it frees up green time for the motorists. Win-win all the way around, and you get a much more beautiful intersection because we got some places for some trees, and you get that nice bike pedestrian facility. And so whoever bet me lunch about we couldn't improve this intersection, we did it. And this is from kind of Old 41 all the way to West. And so here it's a 4-lane road with left turn lanes. Again, we're not taking away any lanes, but what we're doing is adjusting the allocation of the right-of-way such that we can create again, that nice facility down the south side. Now, the reason we picked the south side is because out east, most of those communities are out there on the south side. And then as you're going through the balance of the city, there's actually way fewer driveways on the south side, so the friction, if you will, for you on your bike or you're walking is less. And then when you get down to the very far west end, that's where the beach is. It's on, you get to it from the south side easier. So that's why it ended up on the south side. So that is the proposal. Now we have an optional idea here at the end of the street. And so everyone know where we are here? There's the beaches. This is Collier County. That's Lee County. Barefoot Beach. There's the apartments. There's a restaurant right here. Docks. Yeah. And right now, this is where you have to overtake people before you get to the merge. This is where the crossing is and the valet and the 3 driveways. And so we heard all the stories about all the problems that are going on in here. The left turns, there's an incredible amount of activity happening right here just as the highway curve comes around and merges. There's also problems here. This is some kind of security shack, and there's a state park down here. And folks have to queue up for various purposes at this shack. And you've got, what is it called?
It's a guardhouse.
Oh, it's a guardhouse, okay. Okay. The guardhouse. So, and then you've got this 2-way street leading to the parking lot. And interestingly, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 parking lots in a row, all with their own driveways and all with the demand. And if people can't find a space here, they have to get back on the street, turn left, or back here, or back over there. And so you get all this kind of maneuvering going on while people are speeding to get to the merge. And these folks, we heard that they can't get out. It's hard to get out. So we have a proposal, and we think it addresses a lot of these issues. I don't know if I should be over closer to the door. But I'm going to show it to you anyway and see what happens. So I'm going to walk you through this, and I hope you're as excited about it as we are. So we got a roundabout at both ends, and I'll start at this end. What is it called, Joe? Docks. So there's Docks Restaurant. So there's actually 3 driveways right now near this intersection, and what we're proposing to do is consolidate them and put 1 driveway away from the intersection. There's a roundabout here and a roundabout here. And what the characteristic of this is there's no left turns anywhere here. So if you wanted to come out of the development and turn left, you actually turn right into the roundabout and you turn right out. If you want to come to here, you would go through the ramp and you turn right in, you turn right out. The valet would be back here. We would have to get an agreement with the various owners. But so right now it's very difficult to cross the street. I think it's about 70 feet of asphalt to cross what's effectively a 2-lane street. Here it's 12 feet and 12 feet, so it's actually a really easy way to cross. You walk to the splitter island, you walk through. These folks now get out. They have the right of way. They can get out easily. They can get in easily. You've got the roundabout to help reduce the speeds in the curve. The parking lots are actually connected so that if you wanted to find a parking space, you can go in, and if you're disappointed, you can go to the next parking lot without having to leave and get back on the street and get back off. Yeah, there's 2 counties here, so this is what I talked about earlier about cooperation. But it solves problems for both the groups. Now this roundabout is kind of cool because it's got 4.5 approaches. It's got like a normal approach, then it's got a one-way route in, which doesn't even go on the driveway anymore into this area. So it frees up this whole area for the guard shack, the guard house. Oh, I got it half right. So the guard house. So, and we heard about all the queuing and everything that happens there. But if you want to go to the parking lot for the beach, you would go in here. And if you want to leave, you come here and turn right out. So it's really easy to get to and from the beach without having to participate in all of this, and vice versa. Now let's say you were looking for a parking space, and right now, if you don't find one, it's very difficult to turn around. You have to leave, or you have to do a multi-point turn. Now we have a little turnaround, and you can search. Notice you can turn around here, you can turn around here, here, here. So there's a lot of dead-end parking aisles today, and so when you search, you can't get back and search again. So this makes the functionality of the parking a whole lot nicer. One of the things, when we design parking lots, it's a good idea not to have aisles that are more than 100 yards long, because people will tend to speed. So you'll notice that there's turns and stuff as you have to maneuver a little bit in there, so it keeps the speeds down to be like pedestrian friendly. One of the problems today is with the highway curve, it's difficult to cross the street. So if you happen to be walking down the north side, you can cross to the refuge island. So you're only crossing one lane, which is easy to do. Then you look the other direction and you cross the other lane. Notice it's angled, so that when you're crossing the street, you actually look into the eyes of the oncoming traffic. So it's pretty convenient even for children. And that leads you right to the beach. So I guess the bottom line is the valet can be here and they can park back there. No. So the idea is that if we have a consolidated parking, you can operationally, and maybe that won't work what I just said, but the idea is that you can allocate the spaces operationally instead of having separate parking lots that all have to have individual driveways to the road. You actually get 15% more parking spaces here, and you get more parked land here, and you get slower, safer speeds. This will process, this is 2 lanes, and we had an agreement on Tuesday that the traffic volume here is more or less the same here, because not a lot of traffic gets generated in the curve. So we think the 2 lanes will work. Now this is where the 4 lanes begin, this direction. That's what I meant, that there's really no reduction in lanes, except for this little part, which is optional. But we think it'll work fine. This will process easily all the loads that come here, so will that. And it allows you to turn around and do U-turns if you want to. So you get more greenery. Right now, you got about this width with no trees, and will create a really wonderful address in one of your most important places in your whole community, which kind of defines the reason for the road. It's called Bonita Beach Road. So that's an idea. We spent a few hours on it. It's going to take a little bit more time for, all the different entities to weigh in and kick the tires and whatever. But we think it's a good start to create a wonderful end to the street and a wonderful beginning to the beach community, as opposed to that rather hostile highway curve. So that's that. Okay, so that's our presentation. So I think what we'll do is, if you want to ask a question, to be fair, we're going to make a lineup, and Arlene's going to.
And we are recording this. Can you all hear me? We're recording this for TV 98, which is the city's community access channel on Comcast. We're also going to be putting that recording on the city's website. So when you come, if you could please line up here and take the microphone, and please speak into the microphone. And then we just ask that you try to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes so we have an opportunity to hear everybody here tonight.
So if you have any questions, join the line, and then whoever is the best to answer the question will answer. So I'll try my best to answer it. I'll have one of the other people answer it.
Hey there, Donna Stone. One of my questions on this map right here is to the north of Docks. You're showing a parking lot, and I believe there's a house there. So it's going to be kind of difficult to do a parking lot where the house is.
Yeah, you're right. There is a house here, but there is a county parking lot here. So we're not. We're trying to stay in the existing parking lot and further south.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen parking on the other side of Docks, and that's why
Yeah,
I
it's
was.
actually a public parking
Okay,
lot.
all right.
Yeah.
I guess I just haven't tried going that way. The other question I had is that you were talking about coming up from the beach, the 2 left lanes going from Bonita Beach Road onto 41, and you were talking about a road going around the backside of that shopping center and then taking left onto 41 that way. But there's no light there. The closest light, if I remember correctly, is down at Bonita Bay, where like that. Is there a light? Okay, I guess I just don't try going that way because it's so bad. But you would have to do another whole set of lights and intersection that way then?
So yeah, there's actually an existing traffic signal there, so we're just hooking up to that. So.
Okay, but you can get directly across 41?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And I do like that designated bike lane because I think that is, if I was riding on a bike, I wouldn't go on Bonita Beach Road. You know, it's just too dangerous. And I do like that designated bike lane, the way you've designed it with the brakes. The thing I would caution you also is on the trees. Some of your trees are high water users and high leaf maintenance. So especially the live oaks and the maple and the sea grapes, I would be very, very careful with some of those because you're talking about a lot of leaf maintenance into the roads and on the side. But the live oak, oh my goodness, the danger that the maintenance on the sidewalks and the streets from those roots are a pain in the kazoo.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify, did you say there are going to be 5 roundabouts between I-75 and Kings Q?
So there's, we're proposing 3 in the historic zone around
Right.
Old 41, and then there's these 2.
So that's 5.
Yeah, I guess it's
And
5.
how, and there's we are familiar with the Hilton Head, Bluffton area, where they have roundabouts like this, but they're separated by like at least 5 miles. And to have this many roundabouts in this short a period is going to be very difficult with all the visitors and people that don't know their way around and older people that don't have the reflexes to go through these roundabouts. I think you need to rethink some of the spacing of those roundabouts. They're good things in general, but not so close together.
Let's talk a little bit about roundabout spacing. That's a good point. So the reason that we showed you Vail, Colorado, was to show you that on a busy arterial, they actually have them every block. I think these are the closest spacing, and these roundabouts will work independently of each other because they're so far apart. The ones, the 3 in the Old 41 area, they're really to create sort of entry features and to process the traffic so you're not sitting at red lights, you can go through slowly and smoothly. The ones I talked about at the at diamond interchanges like the one you have at 75. In Vail, their diamond interchange has 2 roundabouts on either side of the bridge. And they're so close together that the split, these are called splitter islands, they actually connect together. And if you go to Carmel, Indiana, which is the roundabout capital of the United States, the mayor is enamored with the safety benefits. Carmel, Indiana. Sorry. Guardhouse, Carmel. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the roundabouts actually come together and they fuse, and it's called a peanut about. So they can actually come really close together. So there's actually technically no spacing issue with roundabouts. Now signals are a little different because one signal can back up into another one. Roundabouts don't have that problem, so I think we're okay from a spacing-wise issue. And the nice thing too is that it's all right turns, and they operate at about 15 to 20 miles an hour, so it's actually pretty relaxing pace. Now you can design a roundabout more like one of those old-fashioned rotaries or traffic circles, where you're coming in quickly, like in New Jersey. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that's a whole lot friendlier and safer.
I moved here from New Jersey in 1978. So I remember this is a 2-lane road, and I had a neighbor who used to say, we're real glad people would ride down the road just to knock the grass down. That's when it was a dirt road. But here, how much, I've got well, let me just make a comment and then I'll just ask my question. First of all, this is preferable to having an overpass near my neighborhood, which would negatively affect all of our businesses and property values. So yes, it's change. Change can be scary. But to me, it looks like it's going to be very beautiful. I've seen some of this stuff in Sarasota, not St. Armand's Key, but like what you were talking about, 41, some of the work they've done on there. Because I used to drive a route from Tampa to Sarasota. Okay, so it could be very beautiful. How much success have you had, because we have several jurisdictions and we have private properties along here. That park closes at dusk. There's not a lot of parking for docks, which is one reason why they have valet. How much success in other cities have you had with like private-public partnership for parking? So maybe docks could make a deal with the county. And also you have 2 counties right here. They're gonna have to give up, territory is a big, turf is a big thing in government. So, but for the people, it'd be the right thing to do. And my last question is that little green ditch, the Creekway or the Greenway that you had over by the racetrack. What road does that follow, or is that Matheson or what? Thanks.
Okay, so about this, Greg, when he drew this, was very careful to keep the place kind of divided politically, but still have it integrated from an operations perspective. And how that will work will have to be figured out another time because the ink is still drying on the drawing. We haven't thought that through. But I like your idea about if the park is to close an hour after dusk, that there is an opportunity for overflow parking from the restaurant, which I think would help the street. It would help some of the backups that people were talking about. It would help generate a little bit of revenue for the county, perhaps. It'll make the restaurant more successful. But as long as they remain separate parking lots, it's really difficult to even have the option to do that kind of thing. So I think that's a good idea. The creek isn't running along a road right now. Right now, it's in a kind of a vacant area, so there is no street there today.
2 comments. One about taking the lanes down from 12 feet to 10 feet. We have a lot of trucks trafficking at Bonita Beach Road, especially down near the beach. You have construction trucks, cement trucks, delivery trucks. And we also have a lot of people who have trouble staying in the 12-foot lane. That would be a real concern. The other thing is down into your curve here, I mentioned this the other night, unless you make some kind of provisions for stopping the problem at Coconut Jacks where they back up onto the street, and then making some kind of allowance for getting delivery trucks into docks. Because right now, if you have a circle there won't be anybody going anywhere.
Okay, great questions. Let's talk about the lanes. I oversimplified things because we only have 4 hours for this meeting tonight. Kidding. But the outside lanes, we're keeping 11 feet. It was a technical thing, but most of the trucks ride on the right, so that lane's a little bit wider. All of the corners are designed for trucks to turn. All of these roundabouts are designed for tractor trailers to turn for deliveries. These this access route will be designed not just for the deliveries, but for the fire truck to get in. No, but they do now. But it'd be nice if they could, if they had to get an ambulance in there. For garbage pickup, for maintenance of the beach, all these sorts of things ought to be able to access easily. So, a truck can turn in here and deliver without interfering with the street. You'll also notice that there's right turn lanes at all of these spots, just to make sure that you can get in and out without blocking the road. Notice also this, what we call a throat length here. It was tempting to connect the parking here, but if somebody was waiting for a parking space right here, that could potentially back up. So we have no access until you get to the very far away from the street point where there's a very simple T intersection. Notice there's no parking there either. And that's to help reduce these backups and interference on the street. So there's a few provisions put in there to help.
On the other side is Coconut Jack.
To the right
It's
of
on
you.
the right.
Oh, here. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know all the names of the restaurants.
The one you ate at the other day.
Okay. Yeah, it was actually really good. So this is a one-lane roundabout, and at some point prior to the roundabout, we have to go from 2 to 1 lanes so that the roundabout can operate. And so what we're proposing to do is instead of merge right before the roundabout, we would merge here. And that allows a queuing space for Coconut Jacks. Because when we went there, we couldn't get into the parking lot, and so we were stuck in the street blocking the lane. Now, the 2 lanes right now are necessary for the signal operations because of the green lights and whatnot. But with the roundabout, you don't need that. You don't need 2 lanes. In fact, you don't even want the 2 lanes. But we can use that space to reduce that operational problem in front of the restaurant. So we think this helps alleviate that problem as well. Also, when we left the restaurant, we had to come up here and do a U-turn from the median. And this is a whole lot easier for people to do than that turn that you have today. So I think this operation will improve dramatically with those suggestions. Again, we haven't talked to the people about that, but we think it's a good start.
And because we're recording, if you have any questions, we probably cannot take them from the audience. They
Oh, yeah.
probably need to come here so we can get on the microphone.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to record everything.
I'm Randy Zwicker, and my first question was about Coconut Jacks, because it is an issue, and it does back up the traffic. We've traveled, we were in Ireland last year. They use roundabouts all over the southwest part of that country where we traveled, and it works beautifully. We felt that it was effective and it moves the traffic, and I'm so happy to hear you're going to have 4 lanes, because that was really the reason that we were really worried, because you'll get somebody driving 30 miles an hour, and it just slows everything behind, and it's happening now even with, the 4 lanes. The other thing to be aware of too are that we have churches that spill out all their parishioners at certain times on the weekends. On Saturday night, it just blocks 41 and Bonita Beach Road.
Yeah, I'll put the map up. Yeah, we heard about that.
And also, as you cross 41, you have several very large churches that also are, have high attendance that have the
Yeah,
same
like in
issues.
here.
Yeah. And so, when you talk about doing some access roads, what would be so ideal would be to take a road that is by that church and get them out to 41. Like you said, maybe if they ever give us ease. But those are the things that would really make this become an efficient process, I think.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that you like the roundabouts and experiences elsewhere. And
Yes.
in places like, how did we pronounce it? Carmel? They work great too. And some of those connections we showed here by the really big churches, it was for that exact purpose.
Yes.
Because right now, it's they only have a couple places to come out. And so
Yes.
you have to have police officers there.
Yes, yes, and they control the light, so everything backs up. And just one more thing, I think that things like now just went out of my mind, the tree that, the live oak tree, it's really a very environmentally important plant for this part of the country for the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And also another plant that's really, a tree that's really quite beautiful is the shady lady. It just has lots of little leaves on it. It's quite pretty.
Okay, our landscape architect heard that.
I'd like to talk to you about the east side of Bonita Beach Road, going past 75. You talked about what you can do to beautify the area and put in different bicycle paths. But you neglected to talk about, it's called a culvert that's going right down the middle of that road. What do you intend to do with that?
Okay. Am I going the wrong way? I want to find the interchange.
Not an interchange, it's Bonita Beach Road. East of I-75,
Okay, hang on.
almost to Tower Road.
Okay. Okay. Oh, so through here. Yeah. So this road actually goes a really long way,
Yeah.
and so we didn't want to reconstruct the road, but within our area, what we're suggesting to make it friendly for the pedestrians and bikes is to do the changes on the curb and to the south, outward.
There's a second culvert there. There's a culvert on both sides of the road, a small one, and then right in the middle, there's a huge one. And that's used for overflow, obviously, and probably is 14 feet across in the middle.
Yeah, we're not doing anything in the middle.
Well, then, it's going to look terrible. Well, I mean, I live in Palmyra. We have already did many trees and bushes along our lot line. And we're the only ones that have done anything except further down. I'm not pointing us out. But if you don't fill that in, all you're going to do is have the biggest eyesore in the world. And it was brought up before, from what I understand in one of your meetings, that this is the gateway to a ton of homes that are being built back there. And it's going to look terrible.
On the south side of the street, that's where we focused. But however, you could probably plant some more trees in the middle if you'd want. Our main focus here was to try and make a pedestrian and bike friendly way to get.
That culvert, thank you. That culvert is probably 8 to 10 feet deep as well. So you almost have to put a pipeline in there, cover that pipeline up in order to make it look attractive at all. Because right now, it just looks like dead land in Florida.
Okay, we can take a look at that. So that is more of a purely aesthetic thing. This is functional and aesthetic. So yeah. Thank you.
Hello. I was wondering if you're planning to reduce the speed limit on Bonita Beach Road?
So the question is about are we planning to reduce the speed limit on the street? And right now we're a little bit indifferent on the speed limit changes. If you post a street arbitrarily low, people will drive at their comfort level anyway. And in here, for example, people will drive much slower than they do today through that highway curve because it'll self-enforce. Yes. In the old 41 area, people will drive slowly because it will self-enforce. So I think, so I guess the answer is I would probably not propose many changes in terms of speed limits.
Right.
But if there were safety issues or transition issues or something, I think we would revisit that.
No.
In general, we want less speeding,
Right.
and more of a continuous flow. But our focus wasn't really on the traffic control per se, except where it affected the vision. So we're not really all that interested in this study in more of those sort of operational things. It's more of a design part. So we didn't really go in, we didn't do any speed surveys or anything like that. So we don't have a real strong opinion on the speed limits.
The other question I had was you're reducing the size of the lanes, and I don't know by how much. but the only concern I would have is outside of DC, they made extra lanes and reduced the size of the lanes to the point where nobody will drive 3 lanes because they're so close together, they're not comfortable going 3 lanes at the same time.
So the question is about how much is too much for narrowing?
Yes.
And 10 feet seems to be a good number these days. The State Department of Transportation is actually recommending 10 feet now on streets like
Okay.
this. They used to recommend 12, but that created safety issues and speeding problems. 12 is fine on the interstate when you have, so those lethal
Right.
speeds. But here, 10 is appropriate. And on the sides, we're keeping it 11 because of the curve. So I think we're okay there. I think you'd be able to comfortably drive on the street with those lanes.
Okay, and the other concern I had was the roundabout at the park, will it accommodate that amount of traffic in
Yeah,
that area?
these
That is my
roundabouts will
concern.
accommodate easily the traffic that's in here.
The one by Barefoot Beach.
Yeah, these will accommodate all the traffic here without any difficulty. You know the one, oh, we realize, yeah, there's a
Right.
beach and state park and everything. The roundabout, a busier one is at Old 41 and Bonita Beach. Just to give you an idea of the processing capability of these, when we do that network that I showed you for the Old 41 area, that roundabout in the middle can almost be a 1-lane roundabout. And so it can't because it's just slightly over the threshold, so it has to be a 2-lane. But that's how much more traffic that can process compared to this. So this will handle anything that this will deliver in terms of traffic without any difficulty.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Richard Ferrera. A couple of concerns. One, could you go back to the racetrack area? Oh, I guess, okay. When there's a possibility that gaming is going to be a reality at the racetrack, and they're planning not only decoupling of the racing, but increasing slots. There's also a move to probably about $30–40 million project for hotels and improvement, commercial improvement, but it's already zoned C1. That area on Old 41 South is the ideal entrance into the racetrack and that whole area. And what puzzled me was that the green spot there, you see it at the bottom? Now, is that going to be an entranceway or
Yeah, there's
into-
actually there's 1, 2, 3, kind of 4 entryways into that area.
from Old 41 South?
Yeah.
Okay.
Each one of them will have, these will have left turn. What we're thinking on here is it'll be what we call a 3-lane street. So 1 in each way with left turn lanes, except of course at the roundabout where you don't need left turn lanes. So you'll have multiple ways to get in and out from that direction.
Okay. My second question is, going back to docks, the turn of Hickory Boulevard and BBR, is there any move from east to west, west to east to put walkways, overhead walkways for the pedestrians?
Yeah, that's a
to the
good question.
beach?
That came up a number of times, the idea of grade separated flyovers or tunnels for pedestrians. The tunnel's out of the question because of the water table here. The issue with the overhead crossings is the height requirement. They have to be up 20, I can't remember exactly the height. But
Oh, it's got to be up at least 14 feet
Yeah,
for
it's
the
very
trailer
high.
trucks. Yeah.
And then you've got the American with Disability Act for the ramps going up and down on each side. And they take an enormous amount of property. And they're quite expensive, in the millions of dollars per copy. And people don't like using them. It's difficult to walk up those ramps for a lot of people. Some people use them as urinals, so they're not the nicest places. They're graffiti magnets. And it takes time to use them. So most people will actually, even if you're right beside it, most people will just go across the street. So they're not very popular. They're expensive. And you can only cross in one spot. So here you can cross here, 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 here. Where you put that that's where you're hoping people will cross, but you'll find that people will actually probably walk just underneath it. So,
Well, as a final comment, as a police officer doing traffic for years, the traffic circles are a problem. You have to be trained almost to drive if you're not aware, if you're from out of state and haven't used them. But the runabouts could be a good traffic calming condition, but there's a downside to that, in my experience. It does tend to back up traffic too.
so okay, about the
You know, and
traffic
it has to
circles.
be well signed. You have to have at least a sign saying roundabout ahead, because a lot of people are not used to driving that way.
Yeah, the traffic circles do take training, and they're actually dangerous, and so that's why we don't recommend them. The roundabouts, with the traffic volumes here, you'll rarely have a queue. I think a lot of the problems through here are due to things like the loading, the 3 driveways, people turning left, the long crossing distances. If we can notice, there's only 3 approaches here with no driveways, so there's very little to interfere with the operation of that roundabout compared to what's out there today. So I think a lot of the issues with where the merge is right into the crosswalk and so on, it's caused by a confluence of all kinds of functions in the intersection itself.
I have to say, we came to this meeting tonight pretty pessimistic about this whole arrangement or whatever somebody proposed and everything. And I'm very, very impressed with your presentation. And I'm amazed your answers. You've answered everybody's question, I think, with a lot of detail and extra. And I'm impressed. I think you've done a really good job. And so thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
All right, thanks very much.
Hi, I had one more question. You said that you weren't reducing lanes, but then you made the statement that going into the roundabouts, it's 1 lane. So you are reducing the lanes, so that means that every roundabout, you're going from 2 lanes to 1 lane. And right now, I don't know if anyone else has had the problem, but going down Bonita Beach Road, like right where Old 41 and Bonita Beach is, you know, you have the lane change there. And I can't even tell you how many people at the last minute, whoop, right over, and it's like an accident waiting to happen. And if you've got all these roundabouts that are going from 2 to 1, I'm really worried about the people merging.
That's a good question. So these are single-lane roundabouts. The other roundabouts are 2-lane roundabouts. So there's actually 2 lanes coming into all of them and 2 lanes going out. So there are actually no merge or diverge involved with any of those. So the only time in the entire plan where you have to merge is here. And all we're doing is moving the merge from here in front of this intersection to here so that the roundabout can operate. If you actually had 2 lanes coming into the roundabout, you have a very, very difficult challenge on what to do with the second lane. In the meantime, you've got a problem up here at the restaurant, which we can use that space for. So, yeah, but it's a good question. But we're not doing any merges before any roundabouts in the plan, except for here, because that's the only. This is where the 2 single-lane roundabouts are.
Joe Tamarchio. Right now, the traffic backs up where we have a difficult time making a left-hand turn into Barefoot Beach. So if you're going to bring it down from 2 lanes to 1 lane, have you taken that in consideration?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, it is hard to turn in here. There's a few things that we've done, I think, that would really help the situation. Probably the most important one is that by removing the signals, now you're going to have the right-of-way to turn in. So once you're in the circle, you have the right-of-way, and the geometry of the approaches, we call it self-enforce the operations. So you'll be able to get into there quite easily. Once you get in there, you're not dealing with the beach-related traffic coming in and out either. So that'll help this operation be much smoother. You have much more queuing area. So yeah, I think it'll be a whole lot easier to turn left into your development.
All right, the next question is where you planned on putting the second left prior to 41 as you're heading east? Are you putting a traffic light to make that left-hand turn?
Okay, that's actually an excellent question. That I had a section in the presentation about that, but I didn't put it in the interest of time. But good call, good catch. So at Windsor, if you want to use that third left turn lane that I showed you, you have to turn at Windsor. Now the Publix has a signal to help you turn left into the Publix parking lot. And that signal has a 180-second cycle length, of which you get, I can't remember the number, but it's a small number of seconds to turn left in. If you time the amount of what we call gaps in the traffic, you'll find that probably at Windsor, and we didn't do an exhaustive analysis, we kind of just watched it, the gap that the Publix signal creates allows you to go through, plus the gaps that the 41 signal creates lets you go through. So we think there's actually more opportunities to turn left without a traffic signal at Windsor than with a traffic signal. Now we've suggested to the city to monitor that to see if a signal would be warranted, but we think you could actually get more left turns through without the signal. Because how many times do we saw somebody at the public signal and they can't turn? There's no traffic, they have a gap, they could turn, but they can't because they have a red arrow. Oh, off-season all the time.
Well, that's my next point about the people in this room obviously live in the community, so we might know that that new left-hand turn is there. What about all the people that clog our streets and roads that have no clue? Is the signage going to be appropriate and well identified that this is the way to get to 41 heading north?
Another excellent question. We didn't talk about signage in this whole thing. A lot of what we're suggesting in terms of network can be enhanced with what we call wayfinding signage or trailblazing. And so you could augment all of this with informational signing to help the new person or the uninformed person to find these new routes. However, I suspect that everybody in this room would quickly figure this out because we heard all kinds of creative ways that people have learned already to sneak around. Yeah, so you would all know that, and you'll be surprised if we did an origin destination survey about how many people use this road. A lot of them live on the beaches. A lot of them come here routinely, and they'll eventually learn. But I think your point is good. If it weren't as effective as you would like, you would want to augment it with some sort of wayfinding signs. I'd suggest waiting on that though, because there's something called sign pollution, and we would want the aesthetic of the street to be preserved without a lot of extra signs. See how it goes, and if you need them, put them in, but if you don't need them, don't put them in.
One last question. You plan on putting the bike lanes, from what I understand, on the south side of 41. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So getting across the two bridges, how are you going to do that? You're going to cantilever it?
So between west and the beginning of the curve, we're right now proposing no changes to it. So you'd either have to take your chances in the travel lanes, which a lot of people won't, or use the wider path on the north side. Right now, to keep the 4 lanes, there's just not space on the bridges to do the facilities that we're suggesting. So since there's no space, the option is to remove some lanes and make the space, or share the sidewalk. And the community said, don't take away the lanes. So the answer is to continue using the sidewalk. So that's what we're proposing in that area.
Doug Grant. We vacation in Vail every summer, and I can tell you the roundabouts there seem to work very well. So, and I lived in Jersey, and those don't work. But I think mine's more of an aesthetic question. I think what you're proposing, much of it is terrific, the landscaping and such. But I think we need, this is probably more directed to City Council, we need more of a commitment to maintain it If you go out there now, you'll see they put pavers in, but they don't power wash them. If you've ever sat on the corner of making a left from Vanderbilt onto Bonita Beach Road, the landscaping, it's just weeds, overgrown weeds, and the trees aren't trimmed. And I think we really need to make a commitment. I mean, this is our gateway to the Gulf, and I think City Council really needs to make sure that it's maintained.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if you'll notice, a lot of the maintenance or the landscape we're proposing is native, drought, a lot of it's drought tolerant. What you want is the landscape that does the job, like create a sense of enclosure or accents that requires little maintenance. We're not proposing anything that's a high maintenance. That being said, you still have to do maintenance. We just want to make it as sensible maintenance as we can. And all the materials we would suggest would be resilient materials. There's some opportunities to do some experimentation with permeable paving and so on in the paths to reduce the environmental effects. You may want to explore some of that, but I think the maintenance thing and the commitment is a good point. So thanks.
Okay, Rick Steinmeier, his point was Vanderbilt. One side of the road is Bonita, and the other side is Collier County. I've yet to find out who is responsible for the road. They keep going back and forth. Is it half and half, or one and one, or who? So nobody does it. You know, that's what the problem is there. Let's go back to the turn there at Hickory and Beach Road. We get into there's a restaurant here. The bridge is back in here. So you're talking about squeezing it down from 2 lane to 1 lane in front of the restaurant? Is that about it?
So what we're proposing is that the right-hand lane become a de facto turn lane into the restaurant. So and then the traffic that wants to continue would stay in the through lane to the roundabout and continue on.
So how are you going to prevent the same thing that happens in front of Doc? You know, they fight over it when it splits down.
So what happens in docks is a little bit different than what happens here. In docks, they've got the valet, 3 driveways, and a cross street. What will happen here, I bet, because it's a popular restaurant with a limited size of parking, is there going to be a backup into the street, and we experienced that ourselves. But with this, because of the turn lane, that won't affect the operation of the street or the intersection. So we think it'll be a benefit.
Well, that is a benefit there. Now, this piece here is public property. There's 50 foot of public property there. Now, where are you going to stop your bus at up here? There's a bus stops up here.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we actually
right now, because they closed the lane down, he can stop in front of docks or in front of the entrance to the park and be out of the traffic. Where's he going to go now?
That's a good question, because we didn't do an overt transit layer on this plan because we didn't have a lot of time. But there's the bus, the regular buses, and then there's there's proposal for various trolleys and so on. One of the nice things about this is the trolley can come turn around. And right now there's 60, 70 feet of space dedicated to the highway corner. Here it's much smaller, and it would be quite easy actually to develop a bus stop in here, right where people want to go, and they go to one beach or the other. And if you wanted to do another bus stop over here, you could do that too. So you could put bus stops wherever you'd like, and be able to turn the bus around. So yeah, if you wanted to, you could easily accommodate bus stops in this
Now you're
area.
showing that you're not taking this isn't an access to that parking lot. That's not an access from one parking lot to the other.
This is the way.
Not a road?
It's not a road, but it's a driveway to the parking lot.
That's Doc's property. You won't get that.
So you remember we talked about the cooperation thing?
Yeah, well, I'm
So-
just telling you right now.
So what we would suggest in that this would probably be the valet. You drop off coming in here, and you'd pick up coming out, and that's where they would park. Or you notice there's no parking here. You could, let's say you drop your spouse off here and then go park. So you got some flexibility in here. I think he'll be further ahead on a number of fronts with this arrangement than he is today. But it's a negotiation, and we just drew it, so we don't really know what the result will be when all the parties get to the table.
Good luck on that.
Richard Donnelly, just a general comment and maybe more directed toward your landscape architect. I think there's a great opportunity here to create a master lighting plan for this whole strip, and that would certainly make it a very special way to enter our city and a very special way to be involved in it. It's done in many of the cities over in Europe now, as you probably know. Hopefully you'll bring a lighting consultant on board with your team and consider that as you move forward.
Yeah, the lighting, we didn't show that. I mean, we even had folks that came and, talk about the turtle on this side. You've got several different zones where the lighting probably has to change and be different, because you don't want it to look like a Publix parking lot, but you also want to be able to see and have safety. So we can definitely bring that layer in. That's a good point.
One last question. I think a lot of this, as you were discussing yesterday, was to really take the congestion and make the traffic flow better. I know this is kind of a little pipe dreaming, but any more consideration of the bridge, the second bridge? I mean, the bridge really should be placed in.
Yeah, we actually proposed a number of connections and did a little bit of reality feasibility checking, and we didn't want to propose any connections that we thought was like 0% chance of getting it. In my world of wanting to do more connections, the bridge makes all the sense in the world. But we don't want to advocate something that is going to not go places. And so since it had slightly less than 0% chance, we didn't put it in. There's a bridge at Coconut. It's up here, and it goes around the hotel. So it's a 2-mile bridge over the water, and yeah. So yeah, in respect of time, I think we want to wrap it up. So one more question.
Could you go back to the Coconut Jacks there with the roundabout? Yeah. It seems like that whole intersection is concerning how to get in and out of Coconut Jacks and forgetting about all the people who live there. Am I correct when you enter a roundabout, the first sign you see is yield to the traffic in the roundabout?
Yes, you have to yield to those already.
Okay,
in the
so
roundabout.
once you get traffic going around about a 4-way exit, you can't enter till you know what happens to the guy at the very end. You just, they did this in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was an absolute disaster.
So that's a good concern. So how a roundabout works, you've got, using this one, you've got this what's called the circulating traffic, and you've got the entering traffic. And in this case, most of the traffic will enter from the east and west and go mostly straight. So they'll come from the beach, and they'll probably go up to 41. Yes, there's a lot of traffic coming in here. Do you think this is busier than this?
No.
So Hickory? Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Yeah, I think, first of all, you have to talk in the mic because the people on TV land can't hear you. But but you're saying that certain times of the day this backs up and is very busy with trucks and so on. So let me talk a little bit about the operation.
I think, Ian, what we're going to do is, because in the interest of everyone's time, we did say we would wrap up. So If you have any specific question that you want to take a moment to talk to Ian with, but we're going to let everyone else go. So we don't want to keep you on. But there are a couple things we just wanted to continue to announce. This concludes the visioning process with Ian here on site. We will continue to take your public comments as well. You can contact me, Arlene Hunter, at the City of Bonita Springs. My email address is at the website. You can call City Hall and ask for me. You can also ask for our city clerk. Anytime, you can also please feel free to reach out to your mayor and council members to discuss any questions as well. The next step, Ian will come back at another date to present his final findings to the city council.
I'd like to say a couple of closing comments too. First of all, I want to thank the staff for all of their help. It was, we could not have done any of this without their staff. And you know, the people who set the room, everybody was really terrific and hospitable. And I really want to thank all the folks who came. Though we may not have agreed on everything, particularly at the beginning, every single person who came here cared deeply about the success of the city and the community, and that really came through. And I think we've got to keep the dialogue going, keep listening, and we'll eventually get to a really good place as a community. So thank you very much for participating.